The wind howled through the desolate countryside, carrying with it the biting chill of an approaching storm. Dark clouds loomed overhead, casting an eerie shadow over the abandoned barn that stood alone at the edge of a forgotten road. Inside, barely clinging to life, lay a mother dog and her 5 puppies. She was a skeletal figure, her ribs protruding sharply against her matted, dirt-streaked fur. A heavy rusted chain wrapped around her neck, digging into her raw skin, tethering her to a rotting wooden post. Her eyes, once warm and full of life, were now dull, clouded by exhaustion, hunger, and despair. Her puppies, tiny, fragile creatures, were curled against her body, their bellies sunken, their whimpers weak. They were starving, barely strong enough to move. Their tiny paws trembled, their breathing shallow. They had been left here, forgotten, left to die. For days, maybe weeks, they had suffered. The mother dog, whom no one had cared enough to name, had once tried to fight. She had barked, howled, clawed at the ground in desperation. But no one had come. Now she could no longer stand. Her body had given everything to her puppies. Whatever scraps of nourishment she could provide, she had given. But it was not enough. She watched, helpless, as one of her smallest puppies, a frail white pup with patches of black, stopped moving. She nudged him weakly with her nose, but he didn't respond. A pained whimper escaped her throat. The others clung to her side, too weak to even cry. They wouldn't last much longer. Perhaps she thought it was better this way, better than whatever cruelty the world had planned for them. Then, a sound. The distant crunch of gravel under tires. A car was approaching. Noah Carter had seen a lot of terrible things in his years as an independent animal rescuer. But this was something out of a nightmare. He had been driving down the desolate road when something inexplicable had made him stop. A gut feeling, an instinct. He had nearly driven past the old barn, but something had pulled him back. Now, as he stood frozen in the entrance, the stench of death and decay thick in the air, he realized why. His breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight before him. The mother dog, chained, barely breathing. The 5 puppies, limp against her body. And the one that had already gone still. Jesus Christ. He dropped to his knees beside them. The mother's eyes flickered up at him. Too weak to fight, too tired to hope. Noah had no idea how long they had been here. But they didn't have much longer. His hands worked quickly, shaking with urgency. The chain around the mother's neck was old, rusted. It had been there for weeks, maybe longer. Her skin was rubbed raw beneath it, blood and infection settling in. Noah gritted his teeth as he grabbed his pocket knife and began sawing through the thick metal links. "I've got you," he murmured. "I swear, I've got you." The puppies stirred at the sound of his voice, but they were too weak to move. Finally, the chain snapped. The mother dog slumped forward, too weak to react. Noah didn't waste time. One by one, he gathered the puppies, cradling their frail bodies against his chest. Their fur was thin, their bones sharp beneath his fingertips. They weighed almost nothing. His heart twisted painfully. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Just a little longer." He wrapped the mother in a thick blanket before scooping her up. She barely reacted, her body limp, spent, completely surrendered to fate. Noah refused to let that fate be death. Holding them close, he rushed back to his truck. The drive to the nearest veterinary clinic was a blur. Noah's knuckles were white against the steering wheel. He kept glancing at the mother and her pups in the passenger seat, wrapped in blankets. The smallest one, the white pup with black patches, hadn't moved since he found them. Noah swallowed hard. "Don't let me be too late." The mother lifted her head weakly, her dull eyes locking onto his. "It's okay," he murmured. "You're safe now." But were they? Something about this felt wrong. Something about how they had been left there, restrained, abandoned in such a cruel way. Noah had rescued many strays before, but this didn't feel like simple neglect. This felt intentional, and that thought chilled him more than anything. The tires screeched as Noah pulled up in front of Willow Creek Veterinary Clinic. The building was dimly lit, a small 24/7 emergency sign flickering above the entrance. He barely threw the truck into park before shoving the door open. His heart pounded as he rushed to the passenger seat where the mother dog and her puppies lay bundled in blankets. Their breathing was faint, their bodies dangerously cold. No time to waste. Noah gathered them carefully, cradling the fragile pups against his chest while balancing the mother's limp body in his arms. "Hold on, please, just hold on." The clinic doors swung open as he stumbled inside. "I need help," his voice cracked with urgency. "They're starving, freezing. I don't know how long they've been like this." A woman in scrubs rushed forward. Dr. Evelyn Brooks, the lead emergency vet, took one look at the scene and barked orders to her staff. "Get them to the trauma bay now." The next few minutes were a blur. Noah paced outside the treatment room, his hands clenched into fists. The sound of hurried footsteps, the beeping of monitors, the low murmurs of the veterinary team, it was all a suffocating haze. He caught glimpses through the glass. A vet tech placing an oxygen mask over the mother dog's muzzle. Another technician inserting IV lines into the puppy's tiny legs. Evelyn checking their vitals, her brow furrowed in concern. Noah's stomach twisted. He had seen abused animals before, but something about this was different. Something didn't add up. After what felt like hours, Evelyn finally stepped out. Her face was grim. "They're stable for now," she said. "But they were severely dehydrated, malnourished, and the mother has deep wounds under her fur. Some look like old scars." Noah swallowed hard. "Meaning what?" Evelyn hesitated before answering. "I think this isn't the first time she's been restrained." A chill ran down Noah's spine. Not the first time. He thought about the rusted chain around her neck, the way it had been embedded into her skin, as if she had worn it for far too long. This wasn't just a case of someone abandoning their pets. This was systematic abuse. "I found them in an old barn," Noah explained. "Completely isolated. It didn't feel like a random dumping ground. It felt deliberate." Evelyn nodded slowly. "That's what's bothering me. Usually when people dump animals, they don't bother restraining them. And the way they were left to die, it's almost as if someone wanted them to suffer." A wave of nausea hit Noah. He had thought he was rescuing a helpless mother and her pups. But what if he had just stumbled onto something far darker? Before Noah could dwell on the thought, the clinic doors swung open again. A man and a woman, both dressed in matching blue uniforms with a rescue organization logo, walked in with perfectly rehearsed concern on their faces. Noah frowned. He hadn't called anyone. "Are you the one who found the dogs?" the man asked, his voice smooth and professional. Noah studied them warily. Their uniforms looked official, but something about them felt off. "Yeah," Noah replied cautiously. The woman clasped her hands together. "We run Hope for Paws Animal Rescue. We heard about this case and wanted to help." Too fast, too convenient. Noah's instincts screamed at him. "How did you find out?" he asked. "No one's posted about it yet." A brief pause. Then the man forced a polite smile. "We keep close ties with veterinary clinics in the area. When extreme cases like this come in, we like to step in and take over their care." Noah's gut twisted. They wanted to take the dogs. And then he saw it. A flicker of something in the woman's eyes when she glanced at Evelyn. A silent tension. A warning. Evelyn noticed it too. And that's when Noah knew. These people weren't here to help. They were here to make sure the dogs never spoke the truth. Noah's mind raced. If this so-called rescue group was involved, then that meant someone wanted these dogs out of the picture. He had a choice. He could hand them over and walk away. Or he could find out the truth. His jaw clenched. There was no choice. "No thanks," he said evenly. "I'll be handling their care myself." A flicker of annoyance crossed the man's face before he quickly masked it. "Are you sure?" he pressed. "These cases can be difficult, expensive. We have the resources to take care of them properly." Noah took a step forward, planting himself between them and the treatment room. "I said no." For a split second, an ugly expression flashed across the man's face. Something cold, something dangerous. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. "Suit yourself," he said, forcing a chuckle. "We were only trying to help." Noah watched as they turned and walked out, but something told him this wasn't over. As soon as they were gone, Evelyn exhaled sharply. "Noah," she said quietly, "I don't think that was a real rescue group." Noah nodded, his stomach a knot of tension. "Neither do I." Evelyn hesitated, then lowered her voice. "You need to be careful," Noah frowned. "What do you mean?" She bit her lip. "You're not the first person who's come across dogs like these." A cold chill spread through Noah's veins. There have been cases, dogs found in horrific conditions, barely alive, and then, before they could recover, they'd vanish. Noah's heart pounded. "Vanish?" Evelyn nodded. "Rescue groups would show up out of nowhere, just like tonight. They'd take the dogs, and no one would see them again." Noah's blood ran cold. This wasn't just cruelty. This was a system, and he had just gotten in the way. Noah hadn't been able to shake the uneasy feeling since the moment the so-called rescue group walked into the clinic. Something about them felt rehearsed, artificial, too polished to be real. And the way they had shown up so quickly, before any news of the dogs had been made public, it wasn't a coincidence. Sitting in his dimly lit apartment that night, Noah pulled out his laptop. He had spent years in animal rescue, and while he wasn't a detective, he knew how to dig. The first thing he searched was Hope for Paws Animal Rescue. A website appeared immediately. It looked legitimate, almost too legitimate. Well-designed, with heartwarming images of dogs being rescued and rehomed. Success stories filled the page, each one accompanied by a donation link. But something felt off. The more Noah scrolled, the more he noticed a pattern. The dogs in the pictures all looked the same. Frail, abused, terrified. Each story had the same kind of dramatic wording, designed to evoke pity, sympathy, and money. He clicked on one of the donation pages. The goal was to raise money for emergency medical care. The amount requested was high, thousands of dollars per dog. But there was something missing. No follow-ups, no real thugs after they were rescued. His gut twisted. Where did these animals actually go? Noah kept searching. Then, deep in the archives, he found something chilling. A post from 6 months ago. A dog that looked almost identical to the mother he had rescued. Same scars, same haunted eyes. The post claimed she had been saved from an abusive home and was now in a loving family. But Noah had just found her chained up, dying. His blood ran cold. The organization was lying. A heavy sense of dread settled in Noah's chest. He started searching for reports of missing or stolen dogs in the area. And that's when things really got disturbing. Dozens of cases. Dogs that had been rescued, only to disappear. Some were supposedly adopted out, but were never seen again. Others had been placed in foster homes that didn't seem to exist. It was a pattern. And now, Lucky, the mother dog, and her puppies were their next targets. Noah shut his laptop, his hands clenched into fists. They weren't rescuing animals. They were exploiting them. And he had just gotten in their way. A sharp knock on the door snapped him out of his thoughts. Noah's pulse quickened. It was past midnight. No one should be here. He moved cautiously, peering through the peephole. A man stood outside. Noah recognized him immediately. The same man from the clinic, the one who had tried to take the dogs. Noah's jaw clenched. He didn't open the door. Another knock, louder this time. "Noah Carter." The man's voice was calm, but there was something menacing beneath it. "We need to talk." Noah stayed silent. "We know you have the dogs," the man continued. "And we'd really hate for something unfortunate to happen to you." A threat. Noah's breath came slow and steady. His mind raced. He had two options. Let them scare him off or fight back. His eyes flicked to his phone. He had already saved copies of all the evidence he found. His decision was made. He wasn't backing down. The knock at the door echoed like a threat in the quiet night. Noah stood still, his heart hammering. Outside, the man from the fake rescue group waited, his stance too calm, too confident. This wasn't just a warning, this was a message. They weren't going to let him walk away, and they weren't going to let the dogs go, either. Noah clenched his fists, his mind racing. He needed to protect Lucky and the puppies. But first, he needed to face the danger head-on. Taking a slow breath, Noah unlocked the door, but only slightly, keeping the chain latched. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice steady. The man smirked. "You already know." Noah didn't respond. The man leaned in slightly, his expression darkening. "You're meddling in things you don't understand, Carter. Hand over the dogs, and this ends here." Noah's grip tightened on the door. "They're not yours." The smirk disappeared. "They're not yours either." Noah met his gaze without flinching. "They don't belong to anyone. But I'll tell you what they are, evidence." A flicker of something crossed the man's face, annoyance, and something colder. Noah pressed on. "How many dogs have you taken? How many have disappeared?" His voice was sharp now, cutting through the night air. "Where do they go?" The man's jaw twitched. For a moment, there was silence. Then finally he exhaled a laugh. "You ask too many questions." He stepped back, too easily, too smoothly. "We'll be seeing you, Carter." Then he walked away, as if he knew something Noah didn't, and that scared him more than anything. Noah didn't sleep that night. He sat on the couch, his laptop open, scanning through everything he had found. Dozens of missing dogs, all tied back to Hope for Paws. But the trail ended there. No addresses, no clear evidence of where they went. And then, a noise, a faint scratching sound near the back door. Noah froze. He moved silently, grabbing the baseball bat he kept beside the couch. Every muscle in his body tensed as he crept toward the sound. Then, a shadow moved past the window. Someone was out there. His pulse spiked. He reached for his phone, snapping a quick photo before turning on the porch light. The moment the light flicked on, the figure bolted into the darkness. Noah rushed outside, scanning the yard. Nothing. Whoever it was, they were gone. But the message was clear. They weren't just watching him. They were warning him. By morning, Noah knew what he had to do. He had to get Lucky and the puppies out of town. He couldn't risk staying in one place, not when these people were willing to break into his property. Packing quickly, he gathered supplies, dog food, water, first aid kits. He didn't know where he was going yet. He just knew he had to move. Then a call. It was Dr. Evelyn Brooks. "Noah," she said, her voice urgent. "Someone broke into the clinic last night." His blood ran cold. "They were looking for the dogs." Silence. Then Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper. "Noah, I don't think they're just faking rescues. I think they're doing something worse." Noah gripped the phone. "What do you mean?" Evelyn hesitated. Then, finally, she spoke. "I found something. A name." She took a shaky breath. "Noah, they're selling these dogs, and not for adoption." Noah's grip on his phone tightened. "They're selling these dogs, and not for adoption." Evelyn's words echoed in his head, but his mind refused to process them. "What do you mean?" His voice was quiet, but there was an edge of controlled fury beneath it. Evelyn hesitated before answering. "I did some digging after you left. Hope for Paws isn't a real rescue group. It's a front." Noah already knew that much. "They don't just fake rescues for donations," she continued, her voice dropping lower as if someone might be listening. "They sell animals on the black market." A sick feeling coiled in Noah's gut. "For what?" he asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. Evelyn's silence was answer enough. The possibilities hit him all at once. Illegal dogfights, lab testing, even torture videos disguised as rescue content to manipulate donors. He had seen glimpses of this kind of cruelty before, but never this close. Never this real. Noah clenched his jaw. "They want Lucky and the puppies," he said, more to himself than to Evelyn. "Yes," Evelyn confirmed. "And if they get them, they won't survive." Noah exhaled slowly. "Then I won't let them." Noah worked fast. He threw supplies into his truck, food, blankets, medical kits. Lucky and her puppies were still recovering, but he had no choice. He had to move. But as he loaded the last bag, something made him stop. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He wasn't alone. A dark van was parked down the street, engine running, headlights off, watching, waiting. Noah's breath came slow and steady. His mind calculated his options. If he tried to drive away, they'd follow. If he stayed, they'd come for the dogs. Either way, he wasn't making it out of this without a fight. He grabbed his phone, dialing Evelyn. "Get out of there," she said before he could even speak. "Now." "No time," Noah muttered. "They're here." A pause. Then, "I'm calling the cops." Noah almost laughed. "You think that'll stop them?" A beat of silence. Then Evelyn said something that sent a chill down his spine. "They own people, Noah. Be careful." Noah swallowed hard. He'd expected danger, but this was bigger than he thought. Noah turned to Lucky and the puppies. Their lives depended on him. He didn't have time to hesitate. With one last glance at the waiting van, Noah made his move. Instead of heading to his truck, he slipped through the back alley. He needed a head start. The second he disappeared from sight, he heard car doors slam. Footsteps, voices. They knew he was running. "Let them chase me. Just stay away from the dogs." Noah moved fast, but the men behind him were faster. His lungs burned as he sprinted through the empty streets. Then a set of headlights flashed in the distance, not from the black van, from another car. The vehicle screeched to a stop beside him, and the passenger door flew open. "Noah!" Evelyn. Noah didn't hesitate. He dove in. The second he slammed the door shut, she floored the gas. The black van was right behind them. "They're not letting us go," Evelyn said, gripping the wheel. Noah glanced in the side mirror. The van was gaining. "They don't have to catch us," he realized. "They just have to run us off the road." Evelyn's knuckles whitened. Not happening. Noah turned, grabbing his phone. He scrolled through the files he had saved. Photos, screenshots, evidence. He opened his email. A single message sent to every major news outlet in the city. Subject: Animal rescue scam exposed, urgent send. "Done," Noah said. "Even if they stop us, it's too late." Evelyn exhaled sharply. "Let's make sure we live long enough to see it work." Then the impact. The van slammed into them from behind. The world spun. Tires screeched. Noah's head slammed into the dashboard as Evelyn fought for control. The car swerved, barely missing a streetlight. The van pulled up beside them. A man inside aimed a gun. Noah's heart stopped. Then, red and blue lights flooded the street. The police. The van skidded to a halt. But it was too late. Officers surrounded them within seconds. Evelyn gasped. "Did you?" Noah shook his head. "Wasn't me." Then he saw. Down the street, standing in front of the clinic, a woman with her phone raised. A vet tech. One of Evelyn's staff. She had called the cops, and now it was over. The arrests were swift. With the media already alerted, there was no cover-up this time. The fake rescue group was exposed. Donation fraud, animal cruelty, illegal trafficking. It was bigger than anyone realized, and it was finally over. But for Noah, the real victory was back at the clinic. Lucky and her puppies were safe. The mother dog, once nothing but skin and bones, now lay curled up in a warm bed, her eyes softer than before. Hope was still there. Noah knelt beside them, his hand brushing over Lucky's fur. "You made it," he whispered. Lucky blinked up at him. Then, for the first time, her tail wagged. Months later, things had changed. Lucky and her puppies found a home with Noah. The case against the fake rescue group was ongoing, but Noah had done his part. The truth was out. One evening, as he sat on his porch, Evelyn joined him. "You did good," she said. Noah exhaled, watching Lucky and her puppies play in the yard. "So did you." A pause. Then Evelyn asked, "Do you ever wonder how many others are still out there?" Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "Yes." Evelyn studied him. "And what are you going to do about it?" Noah thought about it. Then he smiled. "Something." The judge was executed, but the war is not over. Noah saved Lucky and her children, but the world is still full of cruel people. But he will not stop. Please like and subscribe to us so we can make more good stories.